Yo, what's good? We're going to talk about spiritual maturity. I actually have a whole entire PowerPoint for you guys. Let's pull it up real quick, right? Because I felt like this was a very important topic, so I made a pretty detailed PowerPoint about spiritual maturity. It's going to be a long video probably. Get your popcorn, get your chips, get your little snacky snacks, your little drinks, your henny. Um and yeah, because we're gonna dive deep into this, right? Like the video, subscribe if you're new, hype up the video for your boy if you see the option. My links are down below. Let's get into this, right? So these are the main talking points of this PowerPoint, what maturity actually is, right? Emotional, mental, and social maturity, right? Breaking those down more in depth. Age versus maturity and what people miss about the correlation. What actually speeds up growth when it comes to becoming more mature, right? Core habits that build maturity fast. Going into a daily maturity system, right? Morning, day, and night routines for consistent growth. A weekly growth method. We're gonna mention the City Masters and their view on maturity. City Masters are masters of supernatural gifts and abilities. We're gonna see how they view spiritual maturity, right? We're gonna actually dive into spiritual development, regular versus spiritual maturity, right? Distinguishing the two. We're going to get into the full stages of spiritual mastery. We're going to talk about how growth isn't really linear. We're going to go into a practical training path. I'm going to tell you guys the core formula across all the stages and the final truths about fast growth. So let's get into that, right? Real quick, got the copyright. This presentation is intended for educational and personal development use only. Unauthorized reproduction or distribution is prohibited. Okay? So, introduction. The illusion of automatic growth, right? Understand that maturity is not automatic and it doesn't simply come with age. Without intentional effort, one can remain stagnant and begin exhibiting things like emotional reactivity, a tendency to blame others, and repetitive negative patterns. This presentation will explore the true nature of maturity, strategies for building maturity intentionally, and the evolution of regular maturity into spiritual maturity. This is about profound transformation, taking control of your mind, behavior, and identity. So, spiritual maturity, right? It is a journey from it's a journey from ego to awareness, right? So here's what growth actually looks like, right? At the first stage, you are pretty much aligned with the egoic self. You are very identified with your thoughts, emotions, possessions, and external validation, oftentimes being driven by things like desire, fear, and separation. Next, you start having more awakening, right? And you start growing in discernment. You start recognizing your egoic patterns. You start questioning your beliefs. You start observing your thoughts without immediate identification. This will allow you to begin practicing presence, right? You'll start cultivating more mindfulness, being more present, reducing reactivity, and increasing your self awareness. Then you begin embracing impermanence and surrender. You start letting go of control, accepting change, and finding peace in the present moment. This will eventually lead to compassion and interconnectedness, where you begin developing empathy, understanding shared human experience, and recognizing your interconnectedness with all of creation, right? You are connected with all people, your environment, all of reality, right? The last stage is integrated awareness. Last but not least, for sure, when you actually begin to fully understand and integrate your egoic tendencies and live with more clarity, purpose, peace, and love. That's very important. It might sound corny, but it's important to actually hit that stage and actually have true clarity, purpose, peace, and love, because these are oftentimes the things that people are really chasing, right? So, yeah, regardless of what the physical thing looks like, they often want the emotion behind it, right? Some people think that if they become rich and buy a whole bunch of cars, they'll get validation. They really just want love, right? They want to be validated. They want love. They got all that money and bought the Lambos just so they could receive some love because they thought that that was the only way to get love and recognition. You see, so this is how you actually build those internal states. And when you actually live from these internal and eternal states, right? When you live from these states, your life actually gets better because you're acting from a higher frequency and your actions align with a higher frequency, and therefore your life begins to reflect that higher frequency. But yeah, what maturity actually is. It's not about age, but development, experience, and wisdom. So let's get into what maturity actually is, right? So, key aspects of maturity, right? Here's the definition. Maturity encompasses development across emotional, mental, and social aspects of yourself. It's not about age, it's about how you think, how you feel, and how you behave. When we define maturity, it's about how you develop in these areas of yourself and your life. When you develop more in these areas, you are becoming more mature in that area, right? A mature person acts responsibly, thinks clearly, and manages emotions in a balanced way, right? So let's break down emotional maturity. So emotional maturity means that you can feel emotions without being controlled by them, right? You don't ignore your emotions, right? People try to do that. No, you feel emotions. You actually feel them fully, but they don't control you, right? You don't react impulsively and you don't let anger dictate your actions. This enables you to do things like handle criticism calmly, take responsibility for your mistakes, and understand other people's feelings. Actually have empathy, right? So once again, you don't suppress your emotions, you just control your response to them, right? That's emotional maturity, right? Not ignoring them, right? Not trying to numb yourself, but actually feeling it, but expressing it in a healthy way where you're not reacting, but instead you are responding properly to the situation and the emotion that you're actually feeling, right? Now let's talk about mental or intellectual maturity. So a key sign of that is prudent decision making, right? You actually think before acting and you actually consider possible outcomes, right? You don't just act without thinking. You actually are like, what could happen if I do this, right? You actually begin to think a bit more about your actions, right? You start having more awareness towards consequences. You actually begin understanding the impact of your actions on yourself, other people in the world. You see how your actions affect you negatively or positively. You see how they affect the world and other people in positive or negative ways, right? Logical problem solving. You start addressing issues with reason rather than solely emotion. A lot of people do that. A lot of people forget that being rational is a better way to handle situations opposed to emotion, because you should definitely feel emotion, but you should also be able to think above your emotion. You don't ignore your emotions. Once again, you feel them, but you don't let them control your response. You don't react to them. You think about them and bring rationality to your emotion to make the best decision. You start unifying your intellect with your emotions. You don't just operate or you don't just operate on one or the other. You actually unify both, right? And you actually start having an acceptance of reality. You recognize that life may not always align with your personal preferences or fantasy, or you recognize that life may not always align with personal preferences or your idea of fairness, right? So the key shift, right, is moving from expecting reality to match your preferences towards accepting reality as it is, right? You actually see reality for what it is, and you actually make decisions based upon what life is showing you, not what you feel, right? Life is going to give you what it gives you. You can either understand why life is giving you that or just complain about it all day. You see, a lot of people haven't even hit this level of maturity. They're aware of their thoughts. They think about things, but they're not actually gaining a certain clarity on life where they understand the rationale behind why certain bad things happen. When they actually rationally understand it, they make sense of it. They learn how to actually overcome those lower aspects of life rather than being a victim to them, right? So let's get to the next slide. So let's talk about social maturity, right? Behavior is the key indicator of social maturity. So one one indicator of that is where you can actually communicate respectfully. You can actually engage in conversations while considering other people's feelings and perspectives, right? You're able to do things like keep promises. You actually follow through on commitments and you demonstrate reliability. You set healthy boundaries, right? This is why you're able to keep promises. You don't make a promise that you know you can't keep because you have established certain boundaries with yourself and other people. So, setting healthy boundaries, right? This is when you're able to define and maintain personal limits in order to assure the well being of yourself and the other person or people involved, right? You can handle conflict constructively, right? You can actually address disagreements maturely without unnecessary drama and conflict. So this foundation of behavior builds trust and actually strengthens relationships, right? Just like some simple things, but a lot of people lacking them, and that's okay, but that's why I'm making this video. So people can understand these things and then level up, right? So now let's get into age versus maturity, right? Exploring the complex relationship between chronological age and maturity across various dimensions. So, the truth about age. Age does not equal maturity, right? So, chronological age does not guarantee emotional or mental maturity. Okay? Some individuals actually age without developing greater wisdom or self awareness. Others achieve maturity at a younger age through heightened awareness and experience. Maturity is a product of awareness, not the mere passage of time. As time goes on, you might become more aware, but you also might not become more aware. People need to understand that, right? So here's why some people grow faster, right? One, they actually reflect on their behavior. So this is when you're actively considering your actions and the impact of your actions, right? People grow faster because they learn from mistakes. They actually use errors as opportunities for development and improvement. They don't just shut down and say, oh my God, I'm a failure. They say, oh no, I failed, but why did I fail? Okay, I'm going to learn from that mistake and do something about it, right? People that grow faster also choose their responses. They respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively, right? Growth is a choice, not a timeline. You're not a plant. you know, you're a human. You see, while your body might mature, and while that can come with certain maturing in other areas of your life, age does not automatically mean that you're going to be mature. People could be very young but still very mature because they have developed their awareness and they're actually developing themselves on various levels of their being and of their life, right? So therefore, they're not as reactive as some older people and whatnot. So here are the 5 core accelerators of maturity. Number 1 is self-reflection, right? Honest self-observation and understanding your reactions. Taking responsibility, actually owning your actions fully and eliminating the blame. This isn't about making yourself feel bad. It's about understanding what you do to cause certain things to happen. If you blame it on outside factors, you have no control over it. When you actually see how you played a part, you start gaining control over yourself, and now you can choose to do different things that actually align with better circumstances. It's not about making yourself feel bad. It's about understanding how to actually get what you want by being responsible and taking the right actions and owning your actions when you make the wrong decision so you can actually learn from it, right? Emotional control. Being able to feel your emotions without immediate reaction, that's going to accelerate your development. Learning from experience, like I just said, right? Transforming mistakes into lessons and breaking negative patterns. And expanding your perspective, accepting diverse viewpoints, and prioritizing understanding over being right, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do Open Floor, which is what I told you guys. If you don't know, the Open Floor is a series that I'm getting started up on my YouTube where I just invite other people on my YouTube to share perspectives, whether they align or don't align. I want to hear it all. So as long as it's not harmful, then I'm cool. So here are some core habits, and I know that my head's blocking this off. If you're in my Patreon, I'm going to put this in my Patreon as a file that you could download. So for all my Patreon people, this PowerPoint is in there. You could download the PowerPoint and look it over yourself. But yeah, I know my head's blocking it, but I'm also gonna read it out too. So let's talk about building a foundation for growth. One consistent practice at a time. Habit number 1, right? Pause before you react. So when you feel triggered, pause for 3 to 5 seconds before you respond. Separate your emotion from your actions. Differentiate your feelings from your subsequent behavior. This habit alone will build significant maturity, right? We're actually going to get into these core habits, right? Like I said, core habits, right? So this is habit number 1, pause before you react. It's really important, right? Habit number 2, tell yourself the truth, right? No excuses. Avoid rationalizations or justifications for actions or outcomes. There's no excuses. Accept what it is, right? Don't try to protect your ego, right? Resist the urge to defend your actions or avoid admitting fault. The key questions for self-reflection are, what did I do wrong and what could I have done better or differently? Even if you did nothing wrong, you should still try to find out if you could have did something better, because this will help you to grow even more, right? Habit 3, do what you said. This isn't even about, like, of course, building relationships with others is important to a certain degree, but it's not just about that. It's about yourself. You should be able to tell yourself what you want to do, and then you actually do it. You don't say, I'm going to do this, and then just don't do it. That's not mature. You can't even follow through on your own volitions. It's not even always about other people. It's about yourself. You want to be able to actually tell yourself what you want to do. You're giving yourself direction and actually following it, even if it's hard, even if it's more difficult than you thought. It might take longer, but you still get it done, right? You might got to try a bit harder, but you still get it done. Now, of course, sometimes you might want to do something, but then you really just can't do it, and you see that you probably shouldn't do this thing. Yeah, we get that. But actually be able to keep promises and commitments to yourself and others. So, yeah, fulfill your commitments no matter how small, and communicate changes, right? Inform others promptly if plans need to be altered, right? And that's to yourself also. If things have to change, explain why they really have to change. It can't be an excuse, but actually why something has to change, right? Reliability is essentially maturity in action, you see? Be comfortable being wrong. This is a hard one for some people. When I was younger, it was harder. It was hard for me. I used to hate being wrong, to be honest. That's why I actually decided to learn more. A lot of people say, oh my God, you know everything, bro. Not really. I don't know. Not even close. No, I don't. People really tell me that sometimes, but I'm like, no, I really don't. I'm ignorant to a lot of things, to be honest. And, because I'm aware of my ignorance towards certain things, I aspire to learn more about certain things, and I just happen to share what I've learned about certain topics. And because I actually studied the topics that I'm talking about, that's why it seems like I know everything, because everything I'm talking about, I tried really hard to actually understand it, because I used to hate being wrong. Now I don't really care. I actually like it when I'm wrong, because it shows that I was operating off of an error. And if I was operating off of an error within inside of myself, that likely is going to affect my life in a way that might not be the best. So I want the optimal. It's like having the optimal software, right? I want the optimal software to actually run my life. If there's an error or there's a bug in the software, I kind of want to fix that so these things go smoother, you see? So yeah. And when it comes to being wrong, right, drop your defensiveness, right? Avoid becoming defensive when challenged or corrected. And of course, accept correction. Be open to feedback and acknowledge when you are mistaken, right? Yeah, I didn't see it that way. This simple statement effectively removes ego and opens the door for learning, right? I didn't see it like that. I didn't realize that. You're not dumb because you didn't get it. You just might not have seen that. You saw something else at first, but someone's saying, look over here too. Now, of course, some people can be assholes when they try to correct you. Even then, you can actually still take what they're saying if it's correct, but still know this person's kind of a dickhead. So although I'm gonna take the advice, I'm not gonna talk to you ever again because you're a fucking asshole. You could do that too, to be honest. Habit number 5: control your environment, right? To the extent that you can. So reduce exposure to negativity, minimize the impact of negative people, media, or situations, right? Obviously, sometimes you're going to be around those things and it's not your choice. But when it is your choice, get away from those things and surround yourself with growth. Actively seek environments that foster learning and positive development, right? You become what you're around. Habit number 6: daily reflection. So ask yourself every night, what did I do well, right? Actually celebrate your success and identify your strengths. That's a good thing. Ask yourself, where was I immature, right? Recognize areas for personal growth and learning. Ask yourself, what changes tomorrow? Actually set positive actually set intentions for positive actions and development, right? Reflection is the engine of growth because since you're looking at yourself, you know what you can actually improve rather than just doing things randomly without any real order or structure. Habit number 7: long-term thinking, right? Have a guiding question, right? The guiding question is, will this help me later or hurt me? That's something you should ask yourself a lot. Now, sometimes certain things will help and hurt you, and it's about what's going to help or like working out. That might hurt, but it's going to ultimately help you. That's good pain, right? So some hurt is good, right? You might say, oh, it's going to take effort and that's going to be painful to my mind. Well, it's going to help you later on though, So like some pain is good, but not all pain is good. If it's going to hurt you and not benefit you at all, don't take it. And some benefits aren't worth it. That's like when people sell their soul, for money. It's like, yeah, you got money, but you can't take that with you when you die, bud, And I ain't saying you're going to go to hell or whatnot, but it's just, there's different things that happen when one sells their soul. At some point, everybody will get to the state where they remember who they truly are and access their divinity again. But the path of getting there can be way easier if you don't do certain BS like quote unquote selling your soul, right? Whatever that concept means, because there's different meanings of that concept depending on who you ask. But I hope you guys get the point. Some things are not worth the benefit if it's going to cause you a certain amount of pain, right? If you get $1 million and it's cool, that's great. But if you get $1 million and you got to freaking unalive your mom, it's like, let's not unalive mommy. I don't care. You can't pay me to unalive mommy. Let's not do that, right? So, yeah, here's the key principle, right? Mature individuals prioritize long-term benefits over immediate comfort, right? So actually see how it's going to serve you or not serve you. And if it's going to take too much without giving enough back, you probably shouldn't do it. Now, habit number 8, stay calm when other people aren't, right? People have this thing, I'm going to match energy. No, don't match emotional energy. Stop doing that. Avoid escalating situations by mirroring the intensity or negativity of others, right? Do not do that. You should avoid doing that. I'm going to match your energy. Then things just get worse. Why are we doing that? Bring it down, right? Stay grounded. Maintain your composure and thoughtful approach, even amidst chaos. For all the people that want to win these situations, understand that whoever controls emotions controls the situation. Understand that. So if you want to really win, you don't match energy. You actually be the calm one and make them kind of look silly. But it's not even about that. It's not about trying to win the argument. It's about trying to actually move in a way where you're actually developing yourself and not bringing harm towards yourself. That's the real thing we're trying to get at here, right? Now, I give you guys some habits, but here's a daily routine or a schedule that you can follow if you want to follow it, right? I'm giving y'all many different resources, So, like I said, I find spiritual maturity very important, so I'm going to tell you guys everything that you can do to become more spiritually mature. All you have to do is just actually put it into practice, right? But Yeah, so morning routine. This is important because you want to prepare your mind before things actually happen, right? So set an intention, right? Cultivate a state of calm, focus, and discipline, and actually set an intent to stay inside that state, right? Visualize your success, right? Picture yourself handling challenges with maturity and composure. Prepare your mind before life actually happens, right? Actually see the different ways that you could be a bit more mature if certain things were to happen. It's important. It's important, and it's okay to do that, right? Even if you don't visualize something that's going to actually happen in the future, you simply just noticing that, I actually could be more mature in this way if I do things like this. It's going to naturally open more pathways for you in real life situations, right? Mindful communication and integrity, right? This is during the day. So we're going to call this the pause rule, right? Before responding, pause, breathe, and then choose your response, right? So first is going to be trigger, then you pause, then you breathe, then you respond, right? Do that throughout your whole entire day. Speech filter, right? Before you speak, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is it respectful? Is it productive? This practice is actually a really good practice for various things in life, whether it's mundane or actually spiritual, and dealing with certain supernatural gifts and abilities, because oftentimes when we talk, we're not actually consciously speaking. We just start to blabber sometimes. People call it yapping, right? Nothing wrong with talking a lot and sharing yourself. Like you're able to do that, right? Like let's say you just want to like have fun with your friends and talk about anything. No, that's cool. But you don't want to do that all the time, right? Like there's a certain time and place to share certain information and get into certain topics. And then other times you should be a bit more intentional with your words and actually be aware of what you're saying and how it's going to come off to people and how one's going to respond, right? And it's actually good to incorporate a practice where you actually kind of go a day without saying anything that isn't necessary. It kind of just brings a sense of consciousness to your being that can actually help you in various areas of your life, whether it's physically or spiritually, right? Integrity. Uphold your commitments by keeping your word. That's another thing that you should do during the day, right? Now for a nightly routine, right? So, number one, I mentioned this before, reflect on your day, right? Take time to review your actions and decisions. Identify instances where you acted with self-control and responsibility. Also, pinpoint moments where you acted without careful thought. And then determine changes that you need to implement for the next day, right? This is really important for maturity, at least, right? If you want to become a bit more mature, right? Weekly upgrade. So this is like what you just do like at the end of the week kind of a thing, right? So other doing things daily, also do things weekly. So number one is identifying patterns, right? Recognize reoccurring trends in your work, habits, or outcomes, right? Maybe like you notice that throughout the whole entire week, you were immature in the same area. Okay. Maybe you hyper focus on that one now, right? Actually find your biggest weakness. Like honestly assess where you are most vulnerable or underperforming. And then focus on improving one thing for the week, right? Dedicate your efforts to a single impactful improvement for the week. It's really important. Core daily formula. The morning time, set your intent. During the day, cultivate awareness. At night, reflect. Simple. Now, let's get into city masters and maturity, right? Actually understanding how city masters view spiritual maturity. Once again, these are masters of supernatural gifts and abilities. How do they understand spiritual maturity, right? So the true meaning of maturity, right? They would define it as mastery of self, right? This refers to internal control and self-governance rather than merely outward behavior. Full mastery of the self, right? The key teachings deal with control over the mind, right? Cultivating mental discipline and focus to direct thoughts and emotions constructively. Developing detachment, right? Where they actually release unhealthy attachments to outcomes or possessions while maintaining compassion and engagement. reducing the ego, diminishing the influence of the self-centered ego in order to foster humility and objectivity, right? They practice awareness before action, right? They are actually practicing mindfulness in order to observe your thoughts and feelings before reacting impulsively. Alignment with truth, actually living in accordance with one's purpose, principles, and or the natural order of things, right? So these are the key teachings that Siddhi masters mention when it comes to maturity, right? Real spiritual maturity, right? So spiritual maturity, right, deals with developing wisdom and discernment. You begin actually developing a deeper understanding of spiritual principles and applying them to life. Deities, that's something with spiritual maturity, you actually understand deities, right? It's really important right there, right? Yeah, you actually understand the principles that all these spiritual systems are getting at. They tend to mention the same exact things, just with different names and different illustrations of the same exact principle. Transformative character. You begin cultivating virtues such as love, patience, empathy, and self-control. You develop inner peace and resilience. You actually maintain stability and equanimity amidst life's challenges. You start having more purposeful living. You start aligning with actions and decisions with deeply held spiritual convictions. And you recognize the lifelong development of your life. You actually have an ongoing process of intentional growth through practices like prayer, study, and service, right? Way more than that, right? Meditation, just spiritual practices in general, and just trying to evolve yourself on all levels, physical, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatnot, right? So let's get into the, yeah. So, spiritual maturity, what it really is. Spiritual maturity, right? When you could actually be called spiritually mature, it's around when you have the realization that you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, and you're not your identity. You are the observer. Now you're actually tapping into spirituality. You're actually tapping in to the part of you that is of the spirit when you become the observer. Now, if you touch into it one time, that's still great. But a truly spiritually mature person is able to operate from this perspective at all times. And even while being the observer, they're able to still act within the world and use their character in a way that actually supports their growth, not takes them away from growing, right? So, yeah. Now let's get into a deep dive, right? So spiritual maturity represents the profound growth and integration of an individual's inner life, moving beyond superficial understanding to a deep, consistent, and transformative expression of their beliefs and values. So key characteristics and different dimensions of spiritual growth, right? Character transformation, right? Cultivating virtues such as love, patience, kindness, and self-control, reflecting a deepening relationship with the divine or one's higher self. We mentioned wisdom and discernment, developing the ability to understand and apply spiritual principles, right? We talked about that. Ethical conduct, living in alignment with one's values, demonstrating integrity, compassion, and a commitment to serving others, right? Now, when we say serving others, this does not mean that you're a slave to other people. It just means that you want to actually be a person that benefits your environment. You want to benefit the people around you in the world. So this is important for growth because everything that lives on earth benefits the environment somehow, right? This tree that's right here is literally taking from the earth. Its roots are huge. It's taking and pulling from the earth. But guess what? It actually really benefits the earth because the trees will take in carbon dioxide, purify it, and then put out oxygen, right? So although the tree is taking from the earth, it's actually putting back into the earth. So we take from the earth all the time, right? Even simply using electricity takes from the earth. So when you start to become more spiritually mature, you actually want to benefit the environment, right? Not just because you're a good person, but because you recognize that you are interconnected with that. Therefore, you benefiting the environment and other people is actually you just benefiting yourself, right? Emotional resilience, right? You start fostering inner peace and stability that's not easily shaken by external circumstances, characterized by acceptance and equanimity, right? Meaning and purpose. You start discovering and living out a sense of profound purpose and connecting to something larger than oneself. This does not mean that your purpose is going to be some top tier spiritual guru. It's not always that. You just find a reason to live. You just actually have a reason to want to be here, you know? And that might include serving others, right? But it doesn't have to immediately be that my purpose is to serve others. Because technically, serving others, once again, should be something that we kind of naturally want to do when we're actually in tune with who we actually are on a spiritual level. We naturally want to benefit the world, right? We naturally want to do those things. So it's like your purpose is not, I mean, it could be tied to serving others, but like it's not just that, you know, because that's like regular. Like, oh yeah, of course we help people. Duh. I'm trying to do something else too, though. You see what I'm saying? Transcending the ego, right? Moving beyond self-centeredness towards a greater awareness of interconnectedness and selfless orientation. Notice I said transcending, not killing the ego, right? When people say kill the ego, they really mean the attachment to the ego. You can still have a character, be spiritually mature. You're just not attached to the character. You actually transcend the character. Who you are and what you identify with actually transcends your limited human character. And you actually align yourself with something greater than this meat suit and the character that operates the meat suit, right? And of course, the lifelong journey, right? This is not viewed as a final destination, but a continuous process of learning, growth, and refinement. You can still become spiritually mature when you become the observer. There's many different levels of development, right? We're always growing. Cities, right? Supernatural powers, a spiritual caution, right? They can actually be potential distractions, right? Spiritual powers can divert focus from the true spiritual path, right? It could be a hindrance to your growth because attachment to your powers may actually impede spiritual development because you're too focused on an ability rather than focusing on your spiritual growth, right? The ultimate aim of spiritual development is true freedom from bondage, but supernatural powers can sometimes become another source of bondage because you're obsessed with that and you are actually now impulsively trying to do that, rather than doing it in a conscious way, but also putting in effort to develop yourself spiritually. Like your spiritual practice shouldn't be the same as your developing supernatural power practice. Now, some practices might overlap because when you do certain spiritual development practices, it is easier to gain certain abilities. Like, for example, practicing Zen, right? You could practice Zen for your spiritual growth, but you could also practice Zen to get in the proper state to do things like leave the body and do telekinesis and stuff like that, you know? So some practices might overlap, but you should actually have a set time when you're trying to actually spiritually evolve versus when you're trying to develop a certain ability, right? It's really important to understand. Nothing wrong with the ability, unless it creates a sense of bondage where that's your only focus opposed to your purpose and your actual spiritual growth and development. You see what I'm saying? So let's talk about some key distinctions between regular versus spiritual maturity, right? So regular maturity is more characterized by emotional control and like how you treat people, which is still a good thing. Spiritual maturity is more about ego dissolution, awareness, and inner freedom, right? Sometimes people are nice because they are attached to being a good person, a nice person. That's another identity, that's another character. When you transcend that character, you can still be nice, but you're not trying to be a nice person. You simply just are. Right? It's really important to understand what spiritual maturity actually is, right? Spiritual maturity is not about becoming a better person. It's not, right? It's about seeing through the illusion of who you think you are. You're not trying to become better per se. You're just removing what's not real about you. At a base level, we often believe that we are our thoughts, we are our emotions, and we are our identity. Spiritual maturity begins when this identification starts to break down. You realize there's something aware of all of this, and that's what I actually am. This shift in perspective is very transformative. And this actually deals with spiritual maturity. You just become what you just become what you have always been. You become what you already are. You're not trying to become something. You are just recognizing that you're already that. Disidentification, right? So this is a core concept of spiritual maturity. So disidentification means recognizing that your thoughts, emotions, and even your sense of identity, right? Those are transient experiences, not your essential self. If something is transient, that means that it's not transcendental, right? Which means that you can transcend these things. You could transcend thoughts and emotions. They're not experiences that are going to be there forever, right? Thoughts happen, but you're not your thoughts. Emotions happen, but you're not controlled by them. Identity exists, but it's not your core. I can identify with being a human while also know that I'm not a human. I can do that. Initially, this is an intellectual understanding, but eventually, it begins to transform into direct experience. This is what masters refer to when they say, be the observer, right? You stop being identified with these things. You can interact with them without being attached to them, right? All right. Stable inner peace, right? Understanding true peace beyond the absence of problems, right? Common misconceptions, right? People think that peace means that there's no more problems. It means that everything is taken care of, everything is good, there's no conflict, that's not what peace is, right? True meaning, right? Spiritual maturity cultivates peace during problems, right? And it cultivates stillness during chaos. You see? Why? This is achieved through detachment from external events and being rooted in awareness, not circumstance. You see? So you're always peaceful because you're not attached to the situations in a way where you have thoughts that say, this is taking away from my peace, right? People always say that. And I never liked that. I never liked when someone said, yeah, they're taking away from my peace. Because although I get what they mean, sometimes people are causing mass destruction in people's lives. People do that, right? But sometimes it's really just the fact that you are letting them disturb your peace because you're choosing to be really involved with the situation in a way where you identify with it as something that disrupts your peace. Although if you just let go of the attachment to the situation and let go of your judgments and your opinions, you would actually feel that peace again, right? At this stage, external instability ceases to dictate the internal state, right? No matter how the world looks outside of you, it's like, yeah, that's happening. That's what's happening, you know? And just leave it at that. And it's peaceful. You're not like, oh my God, it's so bad. It's so I gotta. No, it's happening and it just is. Okay. I still feel good. That is something that's happening that may not be good for some people, maybe bad for some people, but it kind of just is. I don't have to judge it and stuff like that, you know? But yeah, here are the actual steins Here are the actual signs of stable inner peace. So, number one, that is actually stable and not temporary. It's a deep, abiding sense of contentment and calm that's not dependent on external circumstances, right? It's a persistent baseline state of well being, right? You're just always in an optimal state no matter what, right? Stillness during chaos, the ability to maintain composure and a centered perspective, even amidst external turmoil or uncertainty, right? Reduced desire naturally, right? You have a lessened craving for external validation or possessions arising organically from your contentment. Because you are okay with what you have, you don't feel a need to have to get more. You already feel abundant. So you act from abundance, not from lack, right? You naturally have less desire because what is there to desire when you already have everything? You see? Less attachment. You begin to have a decreased tendency to cling to specific outcomes, people, or possessions, allowing you to have more flexibility and acceptance in your life, right? More compassion. You have an increased capacity for empathy, understanding, and kindness towards oneself and others. Less judgment. You have a diminished tendency to evaluate or criticize oneself and others, and you begin fostering acceptance and open-mindedness. Reduced desire, clarification, right? So, people, right, end up suppressing desire. So now we're talking about, we are mentioning understanding the nature of desire, not suppressing your desires, right? So you actually see through the illusion. You recognize the futility of chasing external validation and possessions. You see, you naturally stop having desires because you see the illusion behind a lot of desires, right? You have a natural reduction of craving as a natural consequence of understanding desire, which leads to less preoccupation. It's not like in your mind where you're just craving it and you need it so bad. You understand the illusion of it, kind of just put it down, right? You have diminished attachment. You begin lessening the emotional grip of possessions and external factors, right? You have reduced emotional dependency, right? You begin strengthening inner contentment and lessening reliance on external sources for happiness. Desire diminishes naturally as its true nature is understood rather than through active suppression. You just see that this thing that you're chasing doesn't actually bring you what you think it does. When you fulfill desires, you oftentimes don't fulfill it because you oftentimes have more desires as a result of fulfilling the first one. You see? When you realize the craving and how you don't need to have anything because all those states of being are already present within inside you, you naturally see the illusion of needing something outside of yourself, and then you stop chasing things outside of yourself. Facts. The shift in perspective, compassion, right? The natural emergence of compassion. So as ego dissolves, we experience a profound shift. Number one, interconnectedness. We move beyond seeing individuals as separate entities. We still recognize identity, but we don't recognize separation. In the sense of, we do understand that this person has their own unique identity and experience, but I also understand that I'm connected with them. We're part of the same family, right? Understanding, not judgment, right? You begin recognizing the motivations behind actions rather than passing judgment, right? So you simply just understand why you do things and why other people do things, but you're not labeling it, right? You just understand it without having to give it a label of good, bad, right, or wrong, right? You know what's happening, but you don't say that it's the right or the wrong thing. You just see it for what it is, right? Key realization: everyone acts from their current level of awareness, right? So what's right, quote unquote, at one level of awareness might be wrong at another. When you're young, it's okay for, like, let's say you're a baby. It's okay to get your diapers changed. If you're a 20-year-old man, you probably shouldn't be getting your diapers changed, right? You see? So you stop judging things as good, bad, right, and wrong because everyone's kind of just acting from their own level of awareness, right? Compassion isn't something that's forced. It's actually just a natural byproduct of clarity. When you understand these truths, your attitude naturally changes. You see, because even judgment is something that someone does at a certain level of awareness. They're not truly aware of what's happening behind whatever they're judging. They just judge it. They try to understand it through judgment, not through clear perception and direct experience. You see? The dangers of supernatural powers. So, at higher levels of spiritual practice, supernatural abilities known as siddhis can manifest. While impressive, they can present a significant spiritual danger, right? Like the ego's return, right? Because power, even spiritual power, can re-energize the ego. Practitioners may start identifying with their abilities, leading to a sense of pride and a sense of superiority. I can do this, you can't, therefore I'm better than you. Get out of here. Identification with advanced states, right? There is a temptation to believe that possessing siddhis equates to spiritual enlightenment, creating a fixed and limiting identity. Many masters caution that these powers can halt or even reverse spiritual growth by reinforcing a separate selfhood, right? You are someone with abilities and no one else has them. I'm so different. I'm so special, right? Which is beginning to directly oppose the goal of ego dissolution and liberation. Uncovering the deep truth. Let's prepare to explore the core realities and fundamental insights, right? So what people miss about maturity: you are not becoming mature, right? You're just removing the ego, right? You're shedding excessive self-importance and pride. You're removing attachment. You're letting go of excessive emotional dependence on things or people. You're removing ignorance. You're overcoming a lack of knowledge or awareness. Maturity is revealed, not created, right? You don't actually become mature. You just reveal your true nature, which is naturally mature. Basic stages of spiritual maturity. What's really happening internally, right? So you have the unconscious or the dormant stage, right? This is where you have reliance on external structures, rules, and beliefs. You have little introspection, and faith is often inherited from someone else or it's assumed. Focus is on comfort and avoiding discomfort. You're just acting like an animal, essentially, right? Then you have the awakening or the questioning stage, right? Here is where you get the emergence of doubt and personal questions, challenging previously held beliefs. You begin seeking personal meaning and authentic experience, which can lead to confusion or anxiety. Then you have the differentiated or the constructive stage, right? This is when you begin the formation of personal values and beliefs, right? You actually have the ability to hold paradoxes and multiple perspectives. You actually understand how two things that seem to oppose each other actually relate to each other and are both true. You begin developing self-awareness and integrating personal faith with a broader worldview, right? Then you have the integration and transformative stage. This is where you have a deep sense of interconnectedness and unity, transcendence of ego-driven concerns, living with profound compassion, wisdom, and purpose. So stage one, the unconscious stage, right? Oh yeah, we getting deep, bro. This is a lot inside here. You know, we're not done yet. Stage one, unconscious, deep explanation. So At this level, you are fully identified with your thoughts, with no separation between awareness and mind. You are your programming, and everything feels automatic. You don't really notice things, right? You don't notice the key aspects like why you react, what triggers you, and you don't recognize your recurring patterns. You are your programming, and everything feels automatic. That's what the unconscious stage is like, right? Stage 2 awareness begins. This stage marks a subtle yet powerful internal shift. You begin to notice patterns in your own behavior and thought processes. You start asking yourself questions like, why did I react like that? And why do I keep doing this? This creates a duality. You have the thinker, then you have the observer. The observer is observing the thinker. This is the birth of real growth, right? Stage 3, discipline, right? Some key actions are pausing before reacting, meditating, and acting intentionally. Some internal shifts, right? You begin to strengthen your attention and you begin to weaken your impulsive behavior. At this point, you are training the mind rather than being controlled by it. Stage 4, ego confrontation. This stage marks a profound and often difficult phase of self-discovery where the protective layers of the ego are challenged. It requires immense courage and honesty to confront the underlying patterns that shape our reactions and our perceptions. So here are the key areas of self-inquiry. Number 1 is your insecurities, right? Recognize your deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt, right? You begin to see your need for validation, right? You actually understand the drive for external approval and how it influences your behavior. You start to inquire about your product control issues, right? You start to examine the attachment to being right, maintaining control, and the fear of losing face, right? Unmasking triggers. So external events become clear indicators of internal egoic responses. For example, experiencing disrespect triggers anger. Upon reflection, the reaction is identified as stemming from egoic defenses, right? Like wounded pride, rather than an objective threat. This is often where individuals choose to disengage due to intense discomfort. This part really is uncomfortable because you have to be like so real with yourself, bro. And you're like, damn, bro, like I'm getting mad to disrespect, but really I just feel like they wounded my pride. And like, you have to start that, John. Yeah. True progress necessitates brutal honesty and a willingness to dismantle self-deceptive narratives to foster genuine growth and authenticity. This is like so important. So stage 5, right, is detachment. This is a big internal shift. This stage marks a significant internal shift where emotional experiences no longer dictate behavior. It signifies the beginning of inner stability. At this state, you have emotional autonomy, right? Emotions still occur, but they do not control actions. You have cognitive space, right? You have a noticeable gap that emerges between feeling an emotion and reacting to it. You have a reduced need for control. There's a diminished urge to micromanage or control external outcomes. And you experience non-reactivity, right? You move away from automatic reactive responses towards a more balanced and stable inner state, right? Bow. Stage 6, witness consciousness. This is a major shift. You don't just control thoughts, you see them happening in real time. It feels like watching your mind and observing your life as it unfolds. There's a clear separation between awareness and your thoughts. This is where spiritual maturity becomes more tangible and realistic rather than just theoretical. Stage 7, surrender. Releasing control for profound understanding, right? You understand the root of suffering and how the primary cause of suffering is the attempt to control everything. You naturally let life unfold. You embrace uncertainty and allow events to proceed naturally without resistance. You begin acting without gripping to outcomes. You actually engage in actions with purpose, but release the attachment to specific results. You have a state of flow, not complete passivity, right? You achieve a state of effortless action and alignment with life's natural course. Alignment. You find harmony within inside of yourself and with your surrounding circumstances. This understanding shifts your approach from controlling outcomes to aligning with life's flow, resulting in a state of effortless action and harmony. Stage 8, unity. Separation starts dissolving, and you don't feel like I am here and the world is out there. Instead, everything feels connected, and you have less sense of me versus others. This is often described as oneness, right? Stage 9, liberation. You have no identification with ego, no internal resistance, and you have a stable awareness. You still function normally, but internally, there's no suffering in the same way anymore. From reactive to aware, transitioning from level 1 to level 2, because we just went through the different levels. Now, here's how you actually evolve from them, right? So practice 1, awareness alarms. Set 3 to 5 alarms per day, right? When an alarm goes off, pause and check. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Why do you do this? Because it builds an awareness of your internal state and it interrupts autopilot. What it does, it strengthens the observer muscle. I'm giving you guys a lot inside of here, right? Y'all already got practices before. Y'all done got daily routines, but this is stuff for more spiritual maturity, not just regular maturity, right? But this will also help with regular maturity too, right? Practice 2, pause training. We're going to keep on mentioning it. With every trigger, pause and take a breath, because this creates separation between stimulus and response, and it weakens impulsive reactions, right? Night reflection. We're going to keep talking about this. Turn experience into growth. Review your day. Identify your triggers and your reactions. Turn experience into growth and build pattern recognition. This process transforms daily experiences into opportunities for continuous growth by enhancing self-awareness and pattern recognition. That's just going from level 1 to level 2 though, right? Let's go from becoming more aware to becoming a bit more disciplined. Now you go from level 2 to level 3, right? Level 1 is just unconscious to aware, right? And going from unconscious to aware is layered, because you have to become conscious of your thoughts, your emotions, your actions. What things do you do which harm you? What things benefit you, right? That's what we do with all these practices, right? You actually pause and you actually reflect on your day and stuff like that, right? But now for discipline. So practice 1, breath meditation, right? How do you do this, right? Just sit still, focus on your breath, and when distracted, gently return your focus to your breath. Why are we doing this? Because it trains you to control your attention. Every time you wander, you go back to your breath, right? Internal benefits. This reduces mental noise, it strengthens focus, and it builds control over your intention. This is the foundation for all higher stages. This is why meditation is so foundational. It's so important. The practice number 2, the 1 discipline rule. So pick one discipline to focus on, right? Choose a single area to focus on, such as avoiding anger, breaking impulsive habits, or contemplating commitments, right? This will build self-control. It's going to rapidly develop your ability to manage your actions and reactions, right? It's going to also rewire your behavior. It's going to help you overcome old patterns and establish new, more effective patterns, right? So focus on one discipline in this manner, because it's going to help you to rewire behavior patterns and build self-control rapidly. Really important. Number 3, conscious speech. Like I said before, how? Before you speak, check, is it true? Is it necessary? Why? Because it reduces unconscious behavior and it builds awareness in real-time interaction. Conscious speech enhances awareness and reduces reactivity. Now we have ego slash shadow work, which is going from level 3 to level 4, right? Now that you're becoming disciplined, you're going to naturally be forced to look at your ego and your shadow more, right? So practice 1, trigger journaling. How do you do this? Whenever you're triggered, write down what happened, what you felt, and what ego part was hit. Was it your pride? Was it insecurity? Was it control? And you're doing this to expose hidden power, to expose hidden patterns, and make the unconscious mind more visible. Make your unconscious actions more visible to yourself, right? Practice number 2, radical ownership. Shift from they made me feel to this reaction came from me. Why do you do this? Because you take your power back, you're going to break the victim mindset, right? If you stop saying that people made you feel a certain kind of way, people have less control over you. When you say this reaction comes from me, that means that you have the ability to control that. That's really important, right? Embrace radical ownership to break free from victimhood and reclaim your power, right? Practice 3, deliberate discomfort. Daily, do something that makes you uncomfortable, like admitting when you're wrong, having difficult conversations, and tackling tasks which you tend to avoid. Why do you do this? It challenges your ego. It weakens avoidance tendencies and builds mental strength. Now we have detachment and stability when you go from level 4 to level 5, right? Practice 1, thought observation meditation. Sit and observe your thoughts without controlling or engaging with them. Why do you do this? Because it shifts perspective from active control of thoughts to passive observation. What it does, it builds detachment from the mind by recognizing that thoughts are transient events, right? This fosters mental clarity and reduces rumination, and it also cultivates equanimity and a more objective view of internal experiences. Practice 2, let go practice. During the day, notice your attachment and say internally, let go. This reduces control patterns and weakens emotional dependency. Practice 3, emotional neutrality. How do you do this? Feel emotions fully and don't act on them. This builds internal stability and is going to separate your feelings from your behavior. Witness consciousness, going from level 5 to level 6, right? Practice 1, self-inquiry. Question who is aware of this thought. Don't answer it logically. Just experience the awareness behind that thought directly. Why do you do this? It breaks identification with the mind. What it does, it shifts your identity from the mind to pure awareness. Awareness meditation. How do you do this? You don't focus on anything, you just observe everything. This expands your awareness and stabilizes an observer state. You're just observing and that's it. This could be a bit harder, right? That's why you have to build yourself up to these types of things, right? The not me practice. When thoughts arise, label it as not me. When emotion arises, label it as not me. This reinforces disidentification and breaks identity to attachment. Integration, level 6 and beyond. Practice 1, continuous awareness. How? Integrate this into your daily life, right? Actively cultivate present moment awareness during everyday activities. This means paying attention to sensory input, thoughts, and emotions as they arise without judgment throughout your routine. Why? This builds real-world integration. By weaving practice into the fabric of your daily existence, you make mindfulness a sustainable and habitual part of your life rather than an isolated activity. This leads to a more profound and consistent impact on your well-being, focus, and overall experience, right? Practice 2, effortless being, reframing your approach to presence, right? Because I thought about including something. Nah. But anyway, shift from doing practices, right? So move away from the idea of performing specific actions to achieve a state of being, right? Shift from that to resting as awareness. Embrace a state of simply being present, allowing awareness to be the natural state. Now, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. In the beginning, you're going to have to do practices, right? But over time, as you do the practices, you begin to recognize that I'm not the one who's doing the practice, but rather you are observing the character in the body doing the practice. That's what this is talking about. Practice 3, compassion and service. Help people and or the world without ego and or recognition. Why? This removes subtle ego layers. Helping without seeking recognition, or help without seeking recognition in order to transcend the ego. Now, what are the real accelerators, right? What actually speeds everything up? Number 1, honesty, right? Eliminating self-deception to see reality clearly. Number 2, consistency, daily practice and persistent effort. Number 3, facing discomfort, right? Actively engaging with challenges and the unknown. And that's it. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. I love you. I'm going to catch you. Peace. The freak out. You smell me. Hey.